Greetings. This is a brief overview and demonstration of a slab flattening jig that I created based on a great deal of thought and time based on other people's designs, etc. I will do my best, as this is my first video. As you can tell, I'm not the most organized. Ignore the memes over my head there. So this jig is intended to be fully adjustable. I can adjust it for width. I can adjust it for height. I can adjust it for height based on the rails, based on the sled itself. And so I'll go over a few of those things here real quick. So if you look at the sled itself, you'll see that it is sitting on just regular pipes that you would use for pipe clamps. This particular set is 58 inches because the surface I'm working on is a tabletop. So you can see just a simple pipe clamp. I did that so that I didn't have to worry about two sets of rails being in storage. This will just come down, the pipe clamps will go back on it, and it'll work as pipe clamps going forward in the future. The sled here is really a basic design, nothing special or fancy. I did have some struggles with the dust extraction. Let me get my light out of the way here. So you can see the jig is, it's got plexiglass underneath. I recently tried to take my finger off with a flattening a slab a few months ago. I created, that was one of the genesis, or one of the reasons I decided to create this new sled. With this sled, it's got on the bottom a dust boot from it's a 2.5-inch dust boot from that goes for a CNC machine. The total the sled is 14 by 14. I did that for a couple of reasons. One, it'll allow me to get behind it and push it, and it's a full 8 inches to get underneath and grab that bit. So I've got plenty of room on either side that I can move this jig back and forth, or this sled back and forth on the rails. Looking at, or before I move on to the rails, you can see here if you look at the ends, I took a piece of, 2 pieces of 3/4-inch plywood, glued them together, put a series of holes a quarter of an inch apart, three holes. They marry the 3 slides here on the. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. Well, excuse me just a minute. It won't hang up. At any rate, you can see the sled here. It has the multi-track. I have some T-bolts here that go through. I have 3 of them up and down the side here. So it is fully adjustable up and down. So this top hole here could go in that bottom portion of the multi-track. And you can see here, I actually have it set to the lowest depth that it can get there. The rails that I'm using here, these are 6 inches tall. They're sitting on a frame that I created underneath this table slab, and they're tightened down with some clamps so that they don't move back and forth as I'm moving the sled up and down. Right now, this slab started about 3 inches. I poured the epoxy about 1 3/4 inches. I'm just now getting it down to the epoxy and trying to flatten it so that I can begin to complete the rest of the table build. So the sled is straightforward. You saw the pipe clamps. One other thing here on the rails that go across. I don't want to take this apart, but you can see I've got a piece of hardwood here. The hardwood is just some hardwood I had laying around, some yellow heart and some walnut, but it's 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches. The hole for the pipe clamp is just over an inch, and so the pipe goes through here. I've got a couple of, and let's see if I can raise this up just a little bit. You can see I've got a couple of, I call them the furniture screws screwed in there, and so that's applying pressure up to hold this clamp or this pipe into place with the hardwood. I did it that way, not trying to keep the whole thing square because I think that'll be darn near impossible. But at least it lets me keep this structure firm as I'm moving up and down the sled to flatten the slab. Couple of other things. When I did the sled, I was worried about the plexiglass breaking. So you can see here, if I can spin this around, you can tell I don't do this very often. You can see here, I put a couple of wood braces underneath there and screwed the router into it. I've been using this for several days, and so far it's not even begin to crack, shake, vibrate. I mean, it's done really well. As far as dust extraction, you can see I put a couple of 2.5-inch vacuum connectors here. One of them is a 90-degree elbow, the other's a 45. They're in opposite corners, and I've got them going pointing in the direction in which the router is spinning, so hopefully that router will throw that dust right in both of those dust extractors. And then on the top, you can see it was a little bit of a chore to put this on top, but you can see I've got hose coming out here. I did have this piece here that I was in the process of throwing away. I took it, cut it down, shortened it off, or shortened it up. That way it provides a firm foundation coming from the back. And then I have this brace. Again, it's screwed into the multi-track, and it's with 2 screws, so it's firm there. And I've got this flex hose coming up here on this other side, connected into this Y. The Y is secured down with some zip ties. This is my second go around on this sled, so if I rebuild it, I'll take into consideration things like I don't know that I want it zip tied. I'd screw it down, tighten it down, secure it in some other way. And then, of course, the dust, the vacuum. One day I'll show you my vacuum, but basically I've run vacuum across my ceiling in my garage. So I've got it so it'll connect to both my 2.5 shop vac as well as the 4-inch on my dust extractor. And in this particular case, I'm using the dust extractor with this 2.5-inch hose, and the closest 4-inch is right next to the dust collection bin. I did it that way because I'm taking off so much of this wood. The dust collection bin needs to be big. I don't want to have to change the bin every 15 minutes. So it's got a 40-gallon trash can over there that's attached to. So that's an overview of the sled. I know some people have asked. I think what would make just one last component to explain what makes this most functional and customizable, if you will, for different shops. This router sled, piece of 12 by 12 plexiglass, you can get a hole saw and cut out those 2.5-inch holes with a drill. The pipes, those end pieces come off both ends. I've got these 6-inch rails over here. Up on the ceiling over there, I've got 2 3.5-inch rails that are about 18 inches long, and I could use those with a couple of 36 or 24-inch pipes if I'm flattening a small piece of cutting board or something, right? So My work surface, my workbench is not anything like fancy like a torsion box that's perfectly flat, but for doing things like this, it's flat enough. It's a couple of pieces of MDF, 3/4 inch MDF laid on top of each other with some T-track cut in it. So that is my router sled. If you'll give me just a minute, I will put the rest of my hearing protection on and get my safety glasses, and I'll give you a quick show of what this can do. Before I do that, I've already taken a couple of passes here. You can see, if I can get the camera in there close enough, you can see here where I've taken 2 passes already. That's taken off about a 1/16 or maybe a 32nd of an inch. One of my concerns has been the epoxy and whether or not it's going to cause divots in the epoxy. I don't know. We'll see when I sand that. But other than that, this piece of wood is relatively flat without issue. I did put a little bit of dry lube on both rails, this cross rail and the rails going parallel, just to help it slide easier. I do run the router at the highest speed. I find that it causes less vibration and it moves smoother. So if you will forgive me, I will find my switch, turn my dust collector on, and then I will show you all a couple of passes on the sled. So bear with me just a minute. And as I don't do these YouTube videos very often, like this is like my first one ever, don't judge me if the sound is too loud. I don't know how to, I'm not that good yet to figure that out. So be ready for some loud sounds, and I will show you a couple of passes on this with this sled. One thing, where'd my light go? There is a light that I put on top here, and I just loop this over the handle of the router, and that gives me good visibility underneath. If I get that back under there again, go. So, turn this back on. We'll give you a couple of passes. See how easy that goes across? And that, again, that's taking about a 16 to 37 to 16 inch pass. That's an 1.5 inch bit. I'm using about half the width of the bit each pass. So, about a 1/4 of an inch by about a 16 inch deep. Not too aggressive. I do try my best to push from behind so that there's no downward pressure. I don't want the downward pressure, obviously, because I don't want the dip, but yeah. Again, you see, I'm just pushing from behind. I'm pushing from behind because I don't want to push down. Again, about half the width of the water bit. Pushing from behind. Taking it all the way across. And I will cut that off. I tell you, I lay this thing down all the time, and I don't ever know where I put it. It's right there behind me. So yeah, that's my sled. You can see here I made a couple of 3 passes. See how smooth that came out? Pretty happy with that. There'll be some sanding to do, obviously. I don't think I'm going to do a top coat on this table. I will probably sand down and finish down the epoxy, and then apply like Rubio Monocoat or something across the entire surface once I sand down that epoxy. More to come on epoxy. This is going to be a kitchen table for my wife. You know, our worst, most difficult customer is always our wives, right? So she wanted it clear, so I'll have to do some sanding, polishing, buffing, etc. And stay tuned for more on that.